Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we're finding and we're learning and we play one more turn of the great strategy games. And today we're going to jump back into our basic tutorial for Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. Now, this is the third part of the production and logistics phase of this tutorial. And in the first part, we talked about production and national supply sources like Berlin. In the second part, we talked about railroads, railways, how you get the vast majority of this freight to your troops. Now, in the third part, we're going to talk about depots. And what is a depot? And I'm not talking about in the dictionary. I guess we could all look that up. In this game, a depot is where freight is received, it's stored, it's sent out, okay? And it could be either sent to other depots or it could be sent directly to units. Unlike the first game, War in the East 1, where supply kind of flowed to your headquarters and then your headquarters distributed it out to your units. In this game, it flows all from depots directly to individual units, divisions, brigades if they're on the map. And so it will flow directly from those depots. Now, depots can also send to other depots to the extent that depot maybe needs it. The game, has that behind the scenes, under the hood algorithms that figure that out based on depot priority, which we will get into. But let's just look at a depot. And so why don't we let's look at Danzig, okay? And uh, I I hate to criticize anything in this game. I think that they've designed it very, it's brilliant in many ways. But I do wish we could find the depot information somewhere else. Okay, so we're clicked on Danzig. If we bring up Danzig, we can see it is a level 2 priority depot. Okay, we can see the rail yard, fine. Uh, Disband depot. We've got that. So if we want to get rid of the depot, we could do that. But there's nowhere on the card where it gives us all the information for the depot. Likewise, over here on the depot symbol, you can click this out here. Let's say, well, actually, how about here? You could click it here and build a depot here if you wanted to. Or if you're on Danzig, you can go here and change the priority. But again, all of the information about the depot is really only available if you're in logistics mode in N here and you hover over the hex. And when you hover over the hex, of course, you see all the information we've gone over before, but you go down there about 5 lines and you see depot, and it is an export port 3. All export ports are 3. Now, I do think this is a little confusing how they did this. That 3 is not about priority. Okay, just kind of put aside what you kind of know about priority, and we're going to talk about here in a minute, and just think of it this way. Every time you go to a depot up here on the screen, if it's a railroad depot, so what I mean by that is a depot on a railroad, and let's hover over this one, it will say rail yard 1. All right, let's go to this one. This is an import port 2. Okay, so rail yard depots are a 1, import depots are a 2. Now forget this number. That's the priority. Let's go to, I don't know, we'll go to Caunus. Caunus is a depot rail yard 1. So see, this is the priority, okay? It's different than what we're talking about. There are 4 different kinds of depots. Ones that are on railroads, and then 2 different kinds that are ports, export depots and import depots. All right. And the import depots are called a depot 2. You can see there import port 2. Export ports are always called 3, no matter what their priority level is. Okay. And then finally, a 4 is a national supply source. So if we go over Berlin, it will say national source 4. It's just a numbering system that I think is very confusing. I'm not sure why they did it that way because ultimately those don't really mean anything. Those one, two, threes, and fours that we just talked about. Just keep in mind when you're over Danzig and it's an export port, that would always be a three. Whether its priority is four or its priority is zero, it will say export port three, okay? Because all export ports are a depot type three. Okay. Next bit of information, trucks. How many trucks are here at Danzig to carry freight? 43 trucks. Now, trucks are a bit of an abstraction, I feel like, in this game. Um, Meaning you've got to have enough trucks, but you don't really control the trucks. The way you control the trucks is to space your depots out well and get your freight close out to the units so that they use or they use fewer trucks to go back to the depot to get the freight, okay? So really you're not going to be driving these, it's not Euro Truck Simulator out here. The game will move those trucks around where they're needed, and so really whether you're using too many trucks or not is really based on how well you've set up the logistics net. Okay, and so kind of in some respects forget about individual trucks and think more about how do I set up this net of logistics out here to be as efficient as it can be. Okay, and then you're just going to naturally lose or use less trucks. Okay, then it has freight, 35,805. That is how much freight is currently at Danzig. All right. It says rail, 30,400, 30,400. What does that mean? Well, at Danzig here, if we look and we click on Danzig, it has a level 4 railroad or rail yard. When something has a rail yard, it's going to have 4 times 10,000 tons. So in this case, 40,000 tons of availability to move through this rail yard. All right, so the railroads come in here, the tracks come in here. It's got a big rail yard, and it can move 40,000 tons of freight through here a turn. Whether it stops at this depot or not, the rail, let's just say 40,000 tons of freight's moving down here. It couldn't. This is capped at 30,000. So let's say 20,000 moves through here, 20,000 here. None of that may stop at the depot. It may just pass through the rail yard. It can handle 40,000 normally. But in this case, it's got 24 damage. And so how does that all resolve itself? Well, it eventually resolves itself that it can handle 30,400 tons of freight, which I assume is 76% of 40,000. I'm not going to do the math, but that sounds about right. Okay, and so what the first number is telling you is how much, or I'm sorry, the second number is how much capacity there is, just maximum capacity. The first number is how much got used or how much is used up. And also, if we click on the choo-choo up here, you'll see it will show you a 30, which means it's got 30,000 more tons of capacity that could go through this rail yard. All right. Um, let's keep moving down about the depot, rail yards, logistics, freight, that sort of thing. So this logistics turn, Danzig received 8,580 tons of freight. That was 14% of capacity. All right. And why is that? Well, that 8,580 must be 14% of 60,000. And if you look down there, that's capacity 60,000. Okay. It's stored 35,805, which just so happens to match the freight number that's, up in the first line. It had 27,278 at the start of the logistics phase. At the end of it, it had 35,000. So it actually gained uh, freight that is being stored here. That is 59% of capacity, that 35,805. It only sent out 52 tons of freight. We'll get to that in a minute. Zero were lost, which is kind of surprising because if we go up to other places, like let's go straight to the highway to hell, here's hell. Hell lost 21 tons of freight. Why is that? Well, because of rail lines, freight can be lost, things can be destroyed, things can be lost, things can be interdicted if they're out at sea or on the rail. So you can lose freight. This just so happens that nothing got lost here. Then you see the capacity, the overall capacity, and the unit truck use. So any units that are here, how many of those were used, how many trucks were used. Then you see right below that where this received its most amount of freight from. All right. And in this case, it received it from Berlin. Berlin sent 8,552 tons of freight by rail. That's what that R is, out of the entire 8,580 that it received. So Berlin basically stocked Danzig full with everything that it got. Okay. Now then, let's go back for a second. Look at Berlin again. Depot Berlin, it's a zero. It's a national supply source. It is going to send out pretty much all of its freight that it can. And if we look at this, you can see numbers that look like a lot of numbers. 2,502,600. Essentially, every national supply source gets 2.5 million tons of freight every turn to distribute. It can send out up to 1.8 million if you look at that rail. National supply sources have kind of a different rail yard kind of thing. So like Berlin's rail yard is a 9. Yeah, it's a 9, which normally means it could send out 90,000 tons of freight. You take that times 20 at a national supply source. That's just how the game works, okay? Now then, what are these bars that are up here? What is this about? So anywhere where there's a triangle like this, it is a depot, okay? The number in here is the priority of that depot. Zero is the lowest priority. And you may say, wait a minute, why that's weird because it's a national supply source. Shouldn't that be, the highest number? No, it's actually the lowest number because it's going to try to send freight out and it will only send freight out to depots that have a higher priority. Okay, so you don't want to keep any at your NSS, and all of them are at zero. If we go down here, where is Frankfurt? I've lost Frankfurt again, my friends. There it is. It also, get off that. It's also a zero, as are Vienna and Prague. Well, there's Prague right there. You can see it. It's a zero. Okay, what are these bars? The green bar is how much freight it received this turn, the depot, and it's just kind of a rough visual representation. Okay, you should always go look at the actual numbers. But this is how much freight it received. This is how much it stored in blue. So it comes in, how much was stored is blue. In red is how much was sent out. And you can see it sent out a lot. It stored a lot. It got a lot this turn, right? And then black is its ultimate capacity. It's not a good example to show Berlin because those look a little funky to me. We can go look at the numbers, but it received 3,000. Okay, this isn't talking about the big dump it gets at the start of every turn. It just got that from other depots. It stored 2.5 million. That's the max it can have stored. It sent out 135,000 tons, okay, and its capacity it says is 60,000. Well, that's odd because it stored 2.5 million. So let's go to one that's actually correct. Those national supply sources are a little funky when it comes to those numbers. Okay, this is a good one. So Warsaw received 4,034 tons. That's 6% of its capacity. It stored 3,914, and as you see on the bars over here, green, that's how much it received. It stored, it's kind of a close number there. It sent out 179. So this must just be not very much, right? It's not an exact, these bars. It's just really showing you that it did send out freight this time, and you've got to go look. Sent out 179. Its capacity is also 60,000. And you may say, well, how do they come to that capacity number? Well, the capacity really if we go over here as a function of the rail yard, and also if there is a headquarters sitting on the depot, you can make the capacity of a depot go up by putting a headquarters on it. Okay, by sitting the headquarters on there. What is the thought process behind that? Well, it's basically you have more logistics people available. You've got a headquarters here. You've got a lot of back office people that can move the freight around, decide where it's supposed to go. You've got more managers, accountants, people with hand-drawn spreadsheets or abacuses sitting here, and therefore it makes the capacity of the depot go up. And so one trick of the trade in playing this game is always for important depots, and I can take the air units off here, always for important depots, have headquarters sitting there. Like I've got Army Group Center sitting here at Brest-Litovsk. It's a very important depot. And now its capacity is up to 55,000. The max capacity in this game for a depot is 60,000. Okay, and so 55,000 is almost there, and that's really because the headquarters is here. Let's move the headquarters out off of here. So it was 55,000. Whoa, you saw the black bar go down. Indeed, it did. It went down to 20,000. Why is it 20,000 at Brest-Litovsk? Well, because it's got a level 2 rail yard. Okay, that's the natural level of capacity, is how big the rail yard is. In this case, it's a 20,000 tons. Okay, it's always by 10,000 tons per size of rail yard. But when we put the headquarters I get on there. Come on, don't get off there, Army Group Center. Now you see that pop back up. Now let's look at it again. And you see 55,000 capacity. Okay, that's how big of a difference having your headquarters sit on this. Let's do it at Warsaw. Okay, what was it again at Warsaw? It's a full 60,000. Why is that? Warsaw Rail Yard is a 5, so naturally it would be 50,000. Let's see if that's true. Let's move this down here, and you see it went down a little bit. What's the capacity? 50,000. Move it back up here, 60,000, I guarantee it. All right, so the size of the rail yard decides the capacity of the depot. Now that is capped at 60,000. It doesn't go over 60,000 unless something is a national supply source, even if you have a headquarters on here. And also, putting a second headquarters on here doesn't really help it. Just keep one on each major depot. And when we get up here to Minsk, you'll see this is a priority 4. It is a rail yard depot. Why is that? Well, there's no port out here at Minsk, right? And so this is a rail yard depot, just like Brest-Litovsk. Anything that's landlocked, that's not on a sea, will be a rail yard depot. Okay, and so anything inland here is a rail yard depot. So let's just look at Minsk really quick. Now, I just happen to have 2 headquarters here. I didn't do that like on purpose necessarily, or at least to beef up the depot. I just kind of thought it would be handy to put the second one there. But let's hover over this, and you can see the capacity at Minsk is 60,000. Its rail yard, I do believe, is a 6, but it does have damage here, okay? And so that is reducing the rail capacity. If you look at the rail capacity, it's showing 52,200. All right, but we have these headquarters sitting here, or we really only need one, and so its capacity is up to 60,000 tons of freight. All right, now then, priority, okay, and you can set the priority of these to be anywhere from 0 to 4. This really is kind of common sense, I guess. There's not like a rule book to go to and say, hey, this is exactly how you do it. What you have to do is kind of look at the map and figure out, and let's back up a little bit. We've got a lot of depots here. I usually do not destroy them. Now you can. I could come out here to Allenston, right? There's an airbase here. That's probably why there's a depot close. Air bases need supply as well, right? Where was that? Allenston? There's Allenston. It's here. There's a level 1 depot here mainly because there's an airfield here, a level 2 airfield that probably needs a little bit of freight to get a little fuel, or at least it did. We could probably get rid of this now, but I don't really destroy them. It would free up trucks, but if you ever want to destroy one, just go, I say destroy, just, to remove it. It's not needed anymore. There's no reason we need freight coming here. If you ever want to, you can just disband it here, okay? And it'll ask you again, are you sure? And when you do that, it would free up any trucks that are here at Allenston. So it can be useful. There's 36 trucks here, right? It also will distribute out the freight that is sitting here at Allenston out to other places. So this may be a good one to disband. As a matter of fact, now I'm going to come back here and maybe do it. I don't think we need Allenston Air Base, at least not now. When the Soviets come back through here in 1944 or 1945, we may need this depot near the air base. And that's really what you're thinking about is you need these depots near air bases and near units, okay? Now you also need big um, kind of distribution centers. Think of it like, okay, our national product or national supply source back here, this is the big, I don't know, Walmart factory, right? Well, how's Walmart going to get its stuff, or Amazon? How's it going to get its stuff out to you? Everything's made here. The Waltons are walking around saying, work harder, work harder. They finally make all this freight. All right, they're saying we got to get it out to where all of our people are. Where are all of our people? Well, they're all the way out here, right? So it's going to go through or down these rail lines, okay? And you want to have a little net of them that's a little ways away. I would say a little ways, 25, 30 hexes or so that are like ones or twos that give it a general sense of the direction you want it to start out. Like you wouldn't want a bunch of ones just like right here and none of them down here, because when the freight comes out on rail, it's going to look around for the next highest one and it's going to start flowing this way. Just think of it, flowing down these railways like rivers. It's going to start floating all up here if you have all of your ones up here. But let's back up, and you can see a lot of these we could probably get rid of. This game is obviously set up to also fight the Western Front. We'll eventually do that. We'll have a war in Europe game. But for now, you could almost turn all of these off. I mean, you don't need any of it to the west. That's automatically taken care of in your theater boxes. You don't have to worry about supplying your troops in France, okay? And so a lot of these are just set up for when the game expands or you get a new DLC. You really don't need them now west of Berlin. You do have Frankfurt here, but I can tell you Frankfurt doesn't crank out much because it's all being modeled to go west eventually. Okay, so anyway, the point is you need to have kind of an even spread as you go west here. Have an even spread of some ones and twos just so it starts initially pulling the freight those directions. All right, and usually you're going to have them near air bases or you're going to have them in fairly major towns like Warsaw, right? Brest-Litovsk is a good one because it kind of is the center between the South and Army Group Center. Army Group South and Army Group Center. Brest is kind of in the middle here, right? And so if you look at Brest, it's got a level 2 rail yard. That's not that impressive, but once you put the headquarters on here, it does 55,000. And then if you need more to the south, it could distribute it out this way, or if you need more in the center, it can do. So it's just kind of a nice one there. Same with Vilnius. Vilnius, it has some connections to like 16th Army to the north. It's as close to 16th Army in the north as it is to, 2nd Army almost here in the southeast or to the southeast of it. So this is a nice central location. And that's what you want to do as you start getting out here a little further, you start putting twos on the board. all right, to draw your freight in the directions you want them to go. And generally, you always want your twos on something that's at least a level 2 rail yard. So it can at least, even if it doesn't have a headquarters here, pass 20,000 freight through it. Okay, you want it to at least get 20,000. If you've only got a 1, 10,000 in freight, look for places that have level 2 rail yards at least to put your priority to. So it's being drug out here by ones. It kind of passes through the ones and looks around and it says, oh, there are twos. Let's start heading that direction, okay? Then when you get to your really, really important distribution places, let me find one here. Well, Brest is a good example. Those should be threes. Okay, so Brest is a 3, Vilnius is a 3, Riga I actually popped up to a 4. I had it as a 3, and when we take Pskov here, I will turn it back to a 3, and I'll make Pskov 4. All right, so these major nodes. I also did have Minsk as a 3. I popped it up to a 4 for this turn in my Let's Play, but when we take Smolensk here, this will become our 4. This will go to a 3, and we'll kind of have this net of 3s that are sort of equidistant. Same with Rovno when we take Kiev, okay? And so if you look up here at Kiev, we'll turn Rovno into a 3, Tarnopol into a 3, Kiev will be our big 4, and in the south, Odessa will be our 4. All right, and we'll just move this right now where we're close to the troops. I make those 4s generally. Now, in this case, Proskerov's not up and running yet because we haven't repaired the rail out there. That's something very important to think of. How far have you repaired the rail out? It doesn't do you any good to make this a 4 if it has to send trucks back to get all the freight. You want your 4s to be where your rail has extended to, generally. Okay, you could put a 4 out here, but it's going to take a lot of trucks to come get it. So I'm waiting until Proskerov is attached by rail. Then I'll pop it up to a 4, maybe. Maybe. Tarnopol, I think, has more rail yards. Proskerov's a 2. Tarnopol is, well, it's also a 2. All right, we will make Proskerov the 4. Tarnopol can maybe kind of go down to a 2 because Lvov is our big distribution center here. Why is that? Well, Lvov has a size 6 rail yard. It could do 60,000 tons even when a headquarters unit's not sitting on top of it. Okay. Now that also, Lvov just brings up something right here. You can see when these rail yards have damage, if you click on them, you can priority repair them. What does that mean? The game will give it special attention to repair that rail yard. If you have damage over a 5%, I mean, that's pretty low, right? But if it's over 5%, it really hurts the amount of freight you can send out of this rail yard, out of this depot, okay? And depots and rail yards kind of work together. The last point here is import and export ports. Easy for me to say. In white, these are export ports. These are generally ports here in Germany or in Poland, over here, East Prussia, Poland, in Germany, that you want to send freight over across the Baltic to import ports. All right. And if we look, and I think you have to click on the ship to do this, but if we look here, um, you can see oh, you got to right click. That's what you got to do. Okay, move, right click. If you look down here, it tells you what C zone it's in. Now, export ports can only send to import ports in their C zone. And if you hit down, I think, is it Control M? No. Is it Shift M? No. Oh my gosh. Where did I get this wrong? We'll have to look at our hotkeys. 1 second. Hotkeys. It's Shift. I thought it was Shift M. No, that's metrics. Um, there is a hotkey. As a matter of fact, we used it today in toggle regions. Yeah, it's Control M. I thought that's what I hit. Okay, well, this is the Baltic Sea. This is telling you the regions. It used to light up a different color. Hmm. Okay. Well, anyway, here. This is the only one you have to remember. It's the Baltic Sea. Export ports, import ports. Okay, I could have saved myself some trouble with that. They have to do it in the same sea region. And when you click on this, it will tell you the sea zone. I guess that's what it's called. It will tell you how many transport ships this port has to move troops. We'll get into that some other time. And how many cargo ships it has. This has cargo ships, so it can export freight to an import port that has a higher priority level. And so if you want an import port to get it here, it's got to be at a higher priority level. All right. Uh, One last thing, we are going to get into units, but if you want to see where everything's going while we're talking about, depots, hit on the number 8. The number 8 will show you these white lines are depot to depot transport of freight. The red lines are depots to units. And you can see out here, for instance, all of the units that this depot is giving freight. All of the ones coming out of Minsk, all the ones coming out of Riga. If we come up here, you can see all of the different core, how this all works together. This whole supply net. Again, white is depot to depot, red is depot to unit. If you see a blue one, it's port to port. We don't have any out here now. I didn't have this set up properly before. But if it was going from here to here, it would be blue if it's doing it by transport ships. And with that, I'm going to stop our discussion of depots. We'll touch on it a little bit more in the next one, but the next time we're going to go out to the units themselves and see how they get freight and the best way to do that. So thank you so much. This has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.